What if I told you that you could get almost everything that the MetaQuest 3 has to offer for half the price? You might think that such a device doesn't exist, but I'm here to tell you that it does, and it's called the MetaQuest 3S. So join me as we dive into our hands-on experience with this new Quest and find out why it might just be the best value VR headset on the market today. The unboxing experience for the MetaQuest 3S is pretty much identical to other Quest headsets. That means you get the headset itself in a cardboard box along with some paperwork and a charging cable. The only difference is that this time you also get an extra long charging cable. Since the included power brick is not the standard figure 8 type, it's actually a wall wart that plugs into the regular figure 8 connector at one end and then into the wall at the other. This allows you to place the Quest on your desk while you play, which is really nice. But if you want to use it in other places, you'll need to use this extra long cable or buy a shorter aftermarket cable to replace it. Taking a look at the headset itself, it looks almost exactly like the MetaQuest 2 and 3 with the same basic design and color scheme. The only way someone would know you're wearing a Quest is if you have the little light bar showing through the top of the strap. That said, there are a few small differences between the 3S and those other headsets. First, the front edge of the 3S is a bit thicker than the 3, and the lenses themselves are smaller. Second, unlike the previous Quests, the 3S has built-in audio. It comes with two fairly powerful speakers that are mounted just above the ear cups. Third, the 3S uses an entirely different tracking system. Instead of using 4 cameras, one on each side of the headset, the 3S has a single infrared camera in the center of the front face of the headset. Finally, there's one more small physical difference. On the left side of the headset, the 3S has a button that the Quest 3 did not have. This button is used to quickly switch between pass-through modes. Now when it comes to specs, the 3S does take a bit of a hit compared to the higher-end models. It has a slightly lower resolution per eye, 1600 by 1440 versus 2000 by 1832. On the Quest 3, the field of view is a bit narrower at 96 degrees versus 106 degrees. It has a slower refresh rate at 75 Hz versus 90 Hz. However, the thing that really separates this headset from the others is its new mixed reality feature set. Now, I've had some mixed feelings about mixed reality in the past, but I've got to say that the experience with the MetaQuest 3S has been really refreshing. The first thing you should know is that this headset is capable of high-fidelity color pass-through. This means that instead of black and white images like on the Quest Pro, you get full color even though the image quality isn't as good as the Quest 3 or 3 Pro. It still looks great, especially considering how affordable this headset is. But what really makes the 3S special is its spatial anchors feature. When you enable this feature, any object that you place in your environment will stay locked in place, even if you leave the room and come back later. So you can go out and run errands, and then come back to the exact same spot and pick up where you left off. In addition, the 3S can keep track of multiple spatial anchors, so you can have multiple virtual objects in the same space at the same time. This means that you can build a virtual desk next to your real desk, and use applications that allow you to virtually reach out and grab things. Like the one I was using earlier today called Hand Physics Lab. In fact, spatial anchors work with any application that supports 3D interactions, meaning that you can pretty much do anything that you would do in fully immersive VR in mixed reality mode. The other thing that the 3S does differently is it only has 2 pass-through modes. One is the color mode that we already talked about, and the other is monochrome night mode. Unlike the Quest 3, there is no color night mode, which means that the 3S doesn't have as good of a night vision feature as the more expensive headsets. That said, I didn't really feel like I was missing out, because most of the time I was either playing during the day, or I was playing games with friends who were all using 3S headsets, so we couldn't see each other's night vision anyway. Another downside of the 3S is that you can't run PC VR games directly from the headset. However, you can connect a gaming PC to the headset using a USB-C cable, and then run PC VR games in a windowed mode. This works surprisingly well, especially if you have a decent PC, even running an RTX 2080. Super at 1080p with a 75 Hz refresh rate was smooth enough for most games. That said, it would have been nice to have native PC VR support, but this feature is typically reserved for the Pro models. One more thing that I want to point out is that the 3S has built-in speakers that are pretty good for a VR headset. Now, they're not quite as good as the ones on the Quest 3, but they're definitely better than the speakers on the Quest 2. Overall, I found that the sound quality was solid, and the volume levels were more than adequate for most situations. If you want to use headphones instead, there's a 3.5mm jack on the bottom of the headset, and the audio quality is very good when using headphones. When it comes to comfort, the 3S is pretty much identical to the Quest 3 and 2. It's about as comfortable as a VR headset can get. The adjustable head strap is soft and padded in all the right places, and it stays in place securely. The only thing I don't like is the cheap plastic retention knob. It feels bad. Thankfully, after 5 hours of usage, my head strap is still tight. So it hasn't loosened over time like the Quest 3's head strap did. In addition, the fit is just right for my head. If you have a big head, you might need to replace the head strap with the deluxe option. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to put on and take off. Once you have it on, you barely notice that you're wearing a headset.
The weight distribution is excellent, and the overall balance is perfect. Also, the 3S offers plenty of adjustability, so you should be able to find the perfect fit regardless of your head size.
Finally, let's talk about performance. For the most part, it's pretty good. The Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 chip seems to run efficiently, allowing the headset to deliver solid performance without getting too hot. In fact, I never felt like the headset was getting uncomfortably warm, even after extended play sessions. Unfortunately, this headset does suffer a bit from screen door effect, but it's not nearly as bad as the Quest 2. In fact, it's about the same as the Quest 3 also. There's almost no motion smoothing artifacts, even when you're moving around quickly. The only problem I ran into was occasional stuttering when loading new areas in VR chat. But this wasn't a problem in any other app or game, plus it was easily remedied by lowering the graphics settings in VR chat. All in all, the performance of the 3S is solid, and it should be good for most people. So overall, the MetaQuest 3S is a budget-friendly alternative to the more expensive MetaQuest 3. It has many of the same features, including high-fidelity color pass-through and spatial anchors, which make it a great choice for those who want to experience mixed reality. While it does have some limitations compared to the Quest 3, such as a lower resolution and refresh rate, these are not major drawbacks, and the 3S still provides a solid VR experience. With its comfortable fit, efficient performance, and surprisingly good speakers, the 3S is a great value for the money. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and push the bell button on for next update.